We've never been able to do that before. If you would just come to all the students' classes, I think their teachers would greatly appreciate you. Immediately come over. My name is Stephen Jones. I'm the director at Virginia21. I just wanted to thank everyone real quick for coming out. It's a great event. We're really honored to have the Chancellor of the college and former Justice Sandra O'Connor here today. I know she's had a fairly hectic schedule and has spoken to a bunch of classes and events and is leaving here and headed up to DC afterwards, so we really appreciate you taking the time to students. I believe we have students here from really all over the state. There's William & Mary collection obviously here, but we have students from Southside, Virginia. We have students from Blue Ridge Community College out in Shenandoah, from Northern Virginia Community College, George Mason. So a lot of students got up earlier than expected, or at least used to on Sunday mornings, and probably curtailed many of their Saturday night activities in an effort to be here and extremely dressed up. So we greatly appreciate y'all coming down as well for this event. But really, the star of the show is the Chancellor, so I don't want to spend much time talking, so I want to bring up Ben Schultz, who is one of our campus leaders here at William & Mary, who I'm sure many of y'all heard from, to come today, and he's going to introduce President Reevely, who will introduce the Chancellor. So thanks to everyone for coming. Feel free to come talk with us afterwards.
Good morning, everybody. First of all, I'd just like to congratulate my peer group for making it to this, so I'm sure a shockingly early presentation this morning. My name is Ben Schultz. I'm a senior here at the college and a member of the extraordinary organization Virginia21. If you guys don't know a lot about Virginia21, definitely check out the information that's there. And I really encourage you to talk to Stephen and Emily afterwards and really get involved in fighting for our higher education here in Virginia. It's my honor this morning to introduce President Taylor Reevely. President Reevely has been serving as William & Mary's 27th president since September of 2008. He's a graduate of Princeton University's Woodrow Wilson School for Public and International Affairs and the University of Virginia Law School. Upon completing law school, he served as a clerk for Justice William Brennan, and since that time served in private practice and has served on a number of community and educational boards. He came to William & Mary 10 years ago to serve at our law school and has served as the dean of the law school before becoming president last September. So please join me in welcoming President Reevely.
Well, it is wonderful to see you all here, and I am in awe of the hour at which you rose, because this just doesn't happen for young people, in my experience, nor for that matter for me, but I enjoy it. It's great to have you all at William & Mary. I'm very impressed with your organization, Virginia21. Seems to me it has a compelling mission to be an action tank, not a think tank, but an action tank involved with important issues on a nonpartisan basis, trying to affect very significant change in the Commonwealth for the better, which involves getting into the political process and trying to shape what happens. Now that's a wonderful mission, to be an action tank that's trying to affect important and valuable change. And obviously the more effective Virginia21's action tank can be, the better it's going to be for the Commonwealth of Virginia. So you all are embarked on something that does really matter. Now, a few words about our speaker. She who enticed you all to get up at an early hour and come from all parts of the Commonwealth. As you know, Sandra Day O'Connor served on the United States Supreme Court for a quarter of a century. And during those years on the court, she became one of its most influential and effective and important members. So, in the light of history, she She is going to be in the first rank of the pantheon of Supreme Court justices. A very, very important member of the court. As you all also know, Sandra Day O'Connor was the first woman on the U.S. Supreme Court. She broke the all-male monopoly there. And that, too, is a matter of great historical significance. Sandra Day O'Connor grew up in southeast Arizona on a huge cattle ranch owned by her parents, where water was very, very scarce. Lots of cattle, lots of horses, very few people, very little water. And she pulled her oar on the ranch. She worked. She cared not just about the other human beings who were part of the ranch's vital operations, but also about the horses and the cattle. She was grounded in the basic virtues: hard work, common sense, teamwork, integrity. The ranch was a great place to be grounded in the basic virtues. She read voraciously as a child and ended up at Stanford University, where she majored in economics, finished everything she needed to do to get a degree in economics in 3 years. And that was an era in which you could go to law school after 3 years in college if you had done really, really well in college, which she had. So she went to Stanford Law School, where she did brilliantly. Ended up near the top, very top of the class, on the law review. Great career at Stanford Law School. Then she embarked on a career dominated by public service. Practiced law for a variety of governmental entities, practiced in a firm, went into politics, ran for office, got elected, served in the Arizona Senate, became majority leader in the Arizona Senate, then went on the bench, became a judge in Arizona. And it was from the bench that President Reagan nominated her to go on the U.S. Supreme Court in 1981. She is now, among many other activities, Chancellor of the College of William & Mary. Now, what on earth is a chancellor? I mean, I'm the president. What is a chancellor?
Not much.
The chancellor is an august being in whose glory William & Mary can bask. And it is true, a chancellor doesn't have many responsibilities. Yeah, but she's up early on a Sunday morning doing good deeds here. The chancellor is the leader, the ultimate leader of the college. And it used to be, you know, this is an ancient college, started in 1693. And initially our chancellors were bishops of London or archbishops of Canterbury. But the first American chancellor was George Washington. He was chancellor of William & Mary at the same time he was president of the United States. And recently we've had Warren Burger, former Chief Justice of the United States, Margaret Thatcher, former Prime Minister of the UK, Henry Kissinger, former Secretary of State, and now Sandra Day O'Connor. Chancellors are very, very important to William & Mary, and this chancellor in particular has been important. One last word about Sandra Day O'Connor. She probably, while she was on the court, was either the most powerful woman in the world, or certainly one of the tiny few. We're looking at someone who has wielded real power. She is, of course, intergalactically famous now. So you've got power plus intergalactic fame. Now sometimes what results is arrogance, a lack of caring for other people, a very pompous jackass, actually. Sandra Day O'Connor is the antithesis of all of that. She does care about other people. She is absolutely down to earth. She's nice. She's collegial. She is living proof you can be powerful, very powerful, and intergalactically famous, and still be a genuine, sincere, caring human being. So you got quite a speaker this morning. Write this down in your memoirs when you listen to Sandra Day O'Connor. Madam Justice, Madam Chancellor, you are unleashed.
He didn't like that at all, but I did grow up on a ranch, and I'll tell you one thing I learned. I still wake up every day by 5:30 a.m. I mean, it's autopilot. In fact, during roundups, we had to be up at 3. We had to be on our horses out at some remote place ready for that day's roundup by the time the sun started coming up. The minute you had daylight, we had to be riding around. And I just never broke the habit. I just automatically wake up really early, sometime between 4 and 5:30 every day. So I'm sorry you have to. You know, I have grandchildren, and boy, they just wouldn't get up, period. Especially on a day like this when they can sleep late. So apologies to all of you for the early day. I know it's painful when you didn't grow up on a ranch and that isn't your habit to get up early. But it's okay if you do now and then, and thank you for being here. It's great to have you come. I was curious to know what Virginia21 really does. Do you talk about some of the activities in which you should engage? Do you, as members, have a voice in what you think about? Yes? No?
Yes.
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 They actually drive.
What?
They drive where we talk about.
They drive what you talk about. Well, that's good, because I think you will engage with more enthusiasm if you have a voice in what topics it is you want to do. I was curious, I was going to ask you today anyway. My husband and I, he got drafted during the Korean War, of all things, and he was just out of law school. And I had gotten out a year before and was working, and he was drafted in the military. That was in the days when we had a draft. I don't know if we're going to again, but that's what it was then. And he wasn't sent to Korea, he was sent to Germany. And so I followed him over there. And we stayed in Germany for 3+ years. And he took his discharge from the military over there, and we came back, and he joined a law firm in Phoenix, Arizona. And I had grown up on a ranch, partly in Arizona, but we were nowhere near Phoenix. I didn't know Phoenix at all. In fact, we had very few acquaintances in Phoenix. One of them was William Rehnquist, my classmate in law school, who then was living and working in Arizona. And we moved to the Phoenix area. And we bought land. We didn't have any money, but whatever little we had, we bought a piece of land, not in the city of Phoenix, but in unincorporated territory, and we wanted to build a little house. I had grown up on the ranch, and we lived in a 4-room adobe house on the ranch. And the cowboy slept on the swing porch that went around the house. We didn't have indoor plumbing, we didn't have running water, we didn't have anything in that house. My parents had to cook on a wood-burning stove, and in the Arizona heat, you can imagine how charming that was in the summer. So it was kind of tough making a go of it, but it was an adobe house, but we plastered it. Adobe, it was sun-dried adobe. You might not even know what that is. Adobe is made of mud. Now, one of the great building materials through the centuries is mud, believe it or not. There's some fabulous buildings around the world in history. They're built of mud. There's a new book out about that, Glorious Mud, published at the Smithsonian. Somebody take a look one of these days. It's fantastic. And if you take mud with clay in it, a certain consistency of dirt, sand, and clay, and a little straw thrown in, and put it in wood frames and let it dry in the Arizona sun, it hardens into wonderful building blocks. It's really great. And that's what I wanted. I wanted the sun-dried adobe for our house. So you'll end up, you may wonder where this is leading, but I'll Anyway, we got our house built. It was hard to find a builder who wanted to build with mud because they built with cement blocks. And if you build with cement blocks, you get mortar and you mix it up on a pallet and you take a trowel and you put a little bit of mortar all the way on the edge, the outer edge of the bricks on the bottom layer. And then you put another brick on top and the mortar kind of seals it. Well, with adobe, you have to mix up a batch of mud, adobe mud. And you get a layer of bricks, adobe bricks. And then you have to slather a full coat of the mud on top and add the next layer of bricks. Not just a delicate little thing on the outer edge. So it's pretty sloppy stuff. And there weren't very few builders in Arizona who wanted to tackle it, but we found one who did. And we found an architect. He was young and starving, so he was willing to design the house. And he kind of liked Frank Lloyd Wright, and so did I. Not for his personal habits, but he was a pretty good architect. And he did a lovely design for this adobe house with high roof of wood and overlooking Camelback Mountain. It was very nice. And we put the adobe walls up, and my husband and I scraped the joints and made it look good. Then we mixed up a thin mix of adobe mud, very, watery mix. And we painted all the walls inside and out twice with a coat of that thin mud. It put a fantastic finish on the walls. And then we finished it with a coat of skim milk, and the casing in the milk sealed the mud. I loved that house and those walls. I mean, it was just fabulous as far as I was concerned. And if ever anything went wrong, I left a pile of adobe dirt out in the back of the house, and I could just mix up a little mud and fix anything that went wrong. It was amazing. So it was kind of a good house. Well, we lived there until I went on the U.S. Supreme Court. Now, housing in Washington, D.C. is very pricey, a lot pricier than Arizona. So we had to sell our house that we liked so much in order to move and get something in the Washington area. So we sold the house, and it was acquired by a family, and after a few years, the husband changed jobs, and they had to sell the house, and another family got it, and that family sold off the guest house and the swimming pool and the dance floor that we had, and went back to the original house. And then they had to sell, and a man bought it who had more money than sense, and he decided to tear it down and build a big house on the lot. Well, friends of ours said, "Oh, you can't do that. You have to save the O'Connor house." And so these friends got busy and scrambled around and started a little organization that raised some money. And the city of Tempe, Arizona, where Arizona State University is, donated a beautiful place on a hill next to the Arizona Historical Society Museum and near the Salt River, where the adobes were made. And they gave that site for the house, and it's now being put up again by some people who are careful about adobe. They had to pull it apart brick by brick and number the bricks, because you can't pick up the whole adobe wall, and it was on a cement slab. So they had to redo it kind of almost by scratch, and it's going up now. And I thought that was remarkable and wonderful in a way, but I didn't think that just having the house preserved was a good enough justification to have people donate money. I thought it needed a purpose. And what should that purpose be? when we had the House and when I was in the legislature, and before and after too, I used it to get groups together to talk about some of the important issues facing the state and see if we couldn't solve some problems. And we got people together, and I would cook some Mexican food. And we'd sit outside by the outdoor fire pit and have a little beer and a little Mexican food and try to work out some of the issues. And we had both Republicans and Democrats involved and those in between. And we were able to solve some of Arizona's issues in a pretty good way and get them carried out. So when I read about Virginia21, I thought, maybe that's what the kind of thing you're doing. I don't know, but it is possible. It is possible to get people of divergent views together on things, on an important issue, and try to work out a solution. And that's a good way to spend your time. And so now in the old O'Connor house, we formed a group and we tried to put some community leaders on it, and we're tackling some current issues in Arizona. For example, one of them that we're going to tackle and try to develop acceptable solution for is the initiative measure. You don't have that in Virginia, I think, but many of the western states allow constitutional amendments and laws, proposed laws, to get on the ballot for the voters by getting enough signatures from registered voters to put it on. And furthermore, if a measure is passed by initiative, by vote of the people, the legislature can't change it. Ooh, scary. So you want to be sure you're getting it right. But Arizona's initiative is subject to some abuses. For one thing, the filing deadline is very close to the election, so that there isn't enough time to check the validity of the signatures or to challenge it. And there ought to be enough time to do that. The filing deadline should be much earlier and give time for legitimate challenges. There ought to be some mechanism whereby something passed by initiative can be changed, maybe by a higher majority of the legislature, something like that, because you make real mistakes, and there they are forever. And so we're trying to work out some suggested modifications, and we'll see if we can help Arizona by getting some of those. Another thing is, people are coming from out of state with issues they care about, coming to Arizona, and they hire petition circulators, and they pay them on the basis of the numbers of signatures they get. And believe me, the petition circulators don't care whether they're properly registered to vote. They want a name on a piece of paper, so they get paid. And so the specter of paid circulators is one we're trying to deal with in some way. So that's the kind of issue that we're trying to look at in Arizona. Another, interestingly enough, is that Arizona has no lieutenant governor. So as many as 9 of our governors in the past 50 years have gotten there because the governor in office left for some other reason, died, left, whatever. And so most of them get there originally not by election. And the person in Arizona who becomes governor is the Secretary of State. And the Secretary of State is the one who accepts filing of administrative rules and things like that. I mean, it isn't anybody who's elected by the people thinking that person might be our governor. If they knew when they went to the ballot that it was important who they select as Secretary of State, maybe they'd be more careful. But anyway, we're tackling that question too. But so I was curious what you were tackling. And as I came in, 2 things occurred to me. One is, where do you vote if you're 18 years old and registered to vote and you're a student at a college or university in Virginia? Can you vote in that community? If you're William and Mary, can you vote in the election here in Williamsburg at the city level? If they accept you, and yet it makes the citizens of the town kind of upset because they don't think you're going to stay here forever. They think you're a student, and when you graduate, you'll leave. And I don't blame them for having that notion. No, that's pretty sensitive. And so, how do you check the qualifications genuinely for voter registration for students? That's hard. And another thing occurred to me. You know, textbooks are terribly expensive. Have you noticed? Huh? Yeah. Do any of you know what a Kindle is, an Amazon Kindle? I have to have one. It's a little thing about that big. It's tinier. It's about the size of a paperback book. And you can order books or a newspaper on the Kindle, and it takes about a minute and a half to load. And they cost half of what a book or a newspaper would cost. Cheap. I have a grandson who's in high school now at a school in Phoenix, and the school requires every student to have a computer. And the school makes you download on the computer all the textbooks, so you have to go buy them. Believe you me, that saves money. Now, you all need to think about that. I mean, that's an issue that I would think would be of interest to students. There must be some way to save a little money on the textbooks, so you better tackle it. And I want to know what else you're tackling. I'm going to stop talking and let you ask some questions, and you tell me what you're looking at. I think it's a good idea to have an organization of students that spans the state, and to talk about some of the issues that you're interested in, where you could weigh in and possibly develop some reasonable proposals that might have a chance of being adopted. So to open it up, you can ask me. Yeah, back there.
Going back to the idea of a single house, where you talked about, we have an issue here, and I know across the state for other college towns, where there's a 3-person per house rule if you're not related.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, you know, for across the street, their houses, they would have like 7 bedrooms in them, but only 3 college students could live in them, and they're available for rent. But oh sure, they're available to rent, but you know, 3 students can't split that sizable rent. But these policies exist all over the state and all over the country.
Right.
You've been an excellent person to work on compromises throughout your whole life, and how can students work on that issue while recognizing the fact that the residents are a little scared, and even a little more scared probably now that more students can vote?
Yes. Let me ask you a question. Statewide, how many students that would be eligible to belong to your group, university or college, are 18 years old or more? What percentage of the students, and how many does that amount to statewide? Do you
The
know?
majority of them.
Well, how many students? Give me numbers. Statewide, how many students?
There's over 360,000 in public Virginia 2 and 4-year schools.
Mm-hmm.
Presumably almost all of them are 18 or turn 18 some point during their freshman year.
And we have a chapter at each of those schools.
Well, you have some clout, not overwhelming, but some. And so that means that if you come up with some kind of a solution, you might be heard. Now, are most of the restrictions on the number of people who can live in a house restrictions imposed by a county or a city, or is it a statewide law?
It's a county
or city. So in some communities, like in Williamsburg, probably there's a high percentage of students in comparison to the voters generally, so that you could make a difference. All right, see, that's pretty powerful. And with that kind of clout, presumably, you could go to the city fathers and mothers and say, look, this is an unreasonable restriction. We want it increased. We want it increased to 4 or 5 or 6 or whatever you think is reasonable. And develop a proposal and say, we need this done. And if you don't do it, remember how many we are in this city. And we guarantee you it's going to be an issue we're going to care about, and it will affect you. So I would do that if I were you. If this is really hampering things for your students in this community, then those of you who live here have the capacity to make a difference on it. And my guess is if you made some compromise, like increase it to 4 or 5 or something like that, you might succeed. That kind of restriction is not unusual. Communities all over the country have applied it because they don't want to have a lot of probationers living in one house in a neighborhood or this, that, and the other thing. And some of those issues have even come to the U.S. Supreme Court. Did you know that? So it's an issue where you could make a difference, and you could certainly find some kind of compromise proposal that might well carry the day. You know how to do it. I mean, if you have those kind of numbers in a community, you should be able to effectuate some kind of a change. And that might be worth pursuing. Another thing you might want to do in advance of that is see if you can't get somebody you support, who would support you, elected to the city council or the county supervisor. And you have enough votes to do that. You can carry the day. Why don't you do that? You get somebody elected, they'll pay attention to you.
Tried last year.
Well, did you have a good candidate? Yes. Was it a student?
Yes.
Listen, you're supposed to be smart. Use your heads. You get some friendly person like a parent or an aunt or an uncle or something who'll propose some of the things you want to propose. You get that person elected, okay? You're not politicians, obviously. Get some consultation for some more. Okay, what else? Okay.
Kind of stunning. How did you really get yourself, I mean, what I'm kind of trying to ask is how did you get your foot in the door to just become one of these incredibly powerful...
Oh, well, heavens, don't listen to all that. Well, I'll tell you one thing. It was hard getting started. Now, I did well in school. And when I went to law school, it never occurred to me that I wouldn't be able to get a job. Never entered my mind. I was like, sure, do well, you'll have a job. And there were all these notices on the placement bulletin board at the law school. Call us, Stanford graduates. We want to talk to you about work. Well, I called them all. Not one of them would even give me an interview. Not just not a job, not an interview from a single one of those people on the bulletin board. They said, well, we've never hired a woman as a lawyer. And I knew a young woman as an undergraduate at Stanford whose father was a partner in a big California law firm, Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, big deal. I said, talk to your father and see if he can get me an interview. She talked to him. He did get me an interview. I went to LA and had an interview at Gibson, Dunn & Crutcher, and the partner was all, you know, nice-looking, impressive man. Looked at my, oh, Miss Day, you have a fine resume here. But Miss Day, this firm has never hired a woman lawyer. And I don't see the day when we will. Our clients wouldn't stand for it. Well, I look pretty sad. And he must have felt a little twinge of pity because he said, well, Miss Day, now how well do you type? And I said, so-so. And he said, if you can type well enough, I might be able to get you a job here as a legal secretary. And I said, well, thank you, but I really don't want to do that. So thanks for the interview. And I left. Well, I learned, by way of the grapevine, that the county attorney in San Mateo County, California, had once had a woman lawyer on the staff. And I thought, ha, they had one, maybe they'll hire another. And in California at that time, I don't know if it's true today, the county attorney was elected. So they were glad handles at heart, you know, these elected officials. Oh, glad handles. So I made an appointment to go see the county attorney, and he was an Italian-American, very pleasant man. And we had a nice visit. Oh, Miss Day, you have a fine resume here. I'm sure you would do a great job. But Miss Day, I get money for this office from the county supervisors. And I'm not funded to hire another deputy. I've exhausted my money for that. And he said, he walked me around the offices and to show me, and he said, as you can see, I don't have a vacant office here. They're all occupied. So I went back to the Lazy Bee Ranch because I was engaged to be married and we were going to have a wedding out there. I had a lot to do. So I wrote him a long letter telling him all the reasons that I thought he should have me in the office, the things that I could do for him that I thought would be helpful, and indicated that I was willing to work for him for nothing until he could get money from the supervisors for another deputy. And I said, I know you don't have an empty office, but I met your secretary, who's very nice, and there's room in her area for a second desk if she had me. That's how I got hired. I went to work in that office for no pay and with my desk in with the secretary. But I'll tell you what, I had marvelous questions to answer. Legal issues that were coming up from the various officers and agencies of the county that were genuinely presented legal issues that needed answers. And I loved my job, loved it. My classmates, the male ones, all had jobs in the law firms. They were taking depositions and doing research, being well paid, but not having the fun I was having. I thought I had the better deal, but I wasn't earning anything. But it turned out all right. I don't think I'd been there more than 3.5 months when the county attorney was made the district court judge. And he was thrilled to become the judge. And that opened up the slot, and my supervisor became the county attorney, and boom, there was a salary available and an office. So that's what I got, and it worked out all right. Now, that wasn't the only time I had to make do with getting a start. It happened 2 more times, so it was not easy. The second time was when my husband was discharged from the service, and we came back looking for where to settle. And he took a job with a law firm in Phoenix, Arizona. And that was, I grew up in Arizona, but we never went to Phoenix. That was too far away. So I didn't know Phoenix, but we settled there. And I looked at the law firms in Arizona, and they had no women in the law firms. This was 1957. I couldn't get a job in a firm. But I met a young man when I was studying for Arizona's bar exam, and he didn't have a place to go. He and I opened a neighborhood law office in a suburb of Phoenix. We just hung out a shingle and went to work. And it was in the days before we had public defenders. So if you had an indigent criminal defendant, the county judges assigned to the case would make an appointment of a lawyer to represent the indigent. And we took a bunch of those to help pay the rent. And we did whatever came in the door. And believe me, it wasn't the kind of problem that usually ends up in the U.S. Supreme Court. It was collections and landlord-tenants and domestic relations, and you know, you can imagine. But it was something to do, and it was in the legal profession, and we were surviving. And things went fine, but I ended up with 3 little kids. And my babysitter moved to California. Uh-oh, disaster. and because I couldn't work without good help at home. So I stopped. I had to give up my little law firm and stayed home for a while, but I did a lot of volunteer work as a lawyer. I wrote and graded bar exams for the state of Arizona. And I started a lawyer referral service for the county bar, and that became quite a successful operation. I took appointments as a bankruptcy trustee. I didn't know bankruptcy law. I figured I could learn, and I did. And I served as a volunteer referee for the juvenile court and decided cases for the court. So I kept very busy, and I ended up on the County Planning and Zoning Commission and being active in a political party as a precinct committeeman and county chairman and so forth. So I stayed very busy, and it was all right. And in due course, a man was elected Attorney General of Arizona, whom I knew and whom I had supported. And I said, by the way, I would like to work in the Attorney General's office. And they didn't have a woman down there, needless to say. But he took me, hired me as an assistant attorney general, but they didn't know what to do with me. I was a female, after all. So they sent me down to the Arizona State Hospital for the Mentally Ill. How do you like that? It was some miles from the state capitol. It was a big facility. In those days, they didn't release anybody on medication. They just locked them up. So we had a lot of people locked up down there. And so they didn't know what to do with me. I didn't know what to do either. So I had to make something out of it. Now maybe that'll happen to you. Maybe you'll have to make something out of your job. And I did, and this is what I did. I got all the doctors together and I said, okay, you must have some legal problems down here. What do you have that needs solving? They needed the law changed because they could not release people who had been committed as mentally ill on medication. They had to be found recovered. Well, and they weren't. So we got the law changed. I helped them. We drafted it, we lobbied it, we got the law changed. And I met with all the nurses, similar issues. We got some of those out. Met with the board of the hospital, and they had a lot of issues. But the main problems were with the people who'd been committed as mentally ill because they were losing their homes, their children, their spouses, their everything. They didn't have any legal help. We needed a legal aid clinic, so I got that going. Well, again, if you make something out of what you are able to do in a job, it's going to be noticed. And the Attorney General decided, my gosh, I think we ought to bring her down to the headquarters because she gets things done. So I got moved down to the main office at the state capitol and got to represent the governor and the legislature and a few other things. And so, you know, that's what sometimes you have to do. You have to be creative in jobs. If you get one that isn't promising, try to make it better. If you can't get one, be creative in how to get the foot in the door. I don't know. It was a long process, but you can do it. Okay, we have time for about one more. Then I have to go. Yeah.
An issue that comes up a lot, for our group at Old Dominion University is not one that's, you know, just focused on our local community, but the state and the United States, and that is partisan redistricting of the state. And all of our students are kind of in one district, so we don't really get the ability to have a lot of voice. And so I was wondering what you thought about nonpartisan redistricting committees. And I know that some of us kind of think that it's one of the greatest threats to our democracy today, the ability of a political party to just kind of redistrict themselves into power over and over again.
Well, they can certainly do that. That is the situation in most states today. And the states have the power to change the system if they have the political will to do it, and most of them don't. I mean, if the legislature is controlled, for instance, in those houses by one political party, they're not apt to change to a system that puts some of their districts at risk. So You don't have a lot of choice, except that that's why I asked how many students statewide are eligible to vote, and what kind of political clout do you have statewide? You have some, probably not huge, but some. And are both houses of the Virginia legislature held by one party? No. So you have room there. And I would work with the party that is willing to go along with a bipartisan districting scheme. Maybe neither of them are. But if they aren't, you can try to interest them in it. It obviously is, in the abstract, more desirable as a system of setting the boundaries for voting patterns, to have a bipartisan districting scheme. I was in the legislature at a time when the Republican Party had control of both houses. The Senate by only one vote. I was the majority leader with a one-vote majority. Kind of tough to work with. But anyway, in that environment, it would have been hard to get a nonpartisan districting scheme in effect, because the party that I finance free state. So you have to bide your time. Now that you have each party represented, try to get one of them who's willing to support this scheme, and then go for it. Try to help them. It's hard.
And we got the Senate to pass it.
Well,
Very well. And then when it went to the House, it was killed the subcommittee.
yeah.
Because the House goes up more.
Is in control of the other party, and you don't have initiative measures, so you're kind of stuck with trying to work it again. And so keep at it. There'll come a time when the makeup of the House changes. So, you have to, don't just give up, don't go away. Keep the issue in front of you, I would say. All right, well, it's been nice to be here, and thanks for getting up early. Try it again sometime. I'm glad to be here. Business to conduct now. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank everyone for coming. We really appreciate it. As a very inspirational message. So I know many students here who are just beginning their advocacy career on behalf of higher education and many other things. And I know a large portion of this side of the room is now looking for their favorite aunt or uncle to run for Williamsburg City Council. So let us know when you find your candidates. But thank everyone for coming. If you have any questions about Virginia21, feel free to talk to either me, Emily's back there, or Chris, and enjoy the rest of your weekend.
How did you like basically, I was like, how did you become so awesome? That was fun. I'm gonna put my
I have a meeting.
Really? Just starting to